Menial tasks, by definition, don't need a human to be done. So if your job to be done is high level cognitive thought, and the tasks that you're continually assigned are jobs that do not need high level cognitive ability, that is an immediate red flag for everyone about the quote unquote culture of the company.
Hi, my name is Roma Santiago, and I'm the founder of Experiment Nation. Today, learn about human first engineering in this in depth interview where Shawn David discusses strategies to organize work and to break down tasks into smaller, digestible sessions. Understand the most effective ways for teams to discover the work that should be automated and how all this impacts company culture. Enjoy the episode.
Shawn David, welcome to the Experiment Nation podcast. Our listeners might know you for talking about processes and automation and how to make work easier. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more to our audience?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, I'm Shawn David, owner of Automate to Win, and I pioneered a process that I like to call human first engineering. And basically, what I do is I go in and I try to identify bottlenecks and busy work in people's lives and then remove them with automation. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro. So right off the bat, I'd like to get into our first question and try to understand if there's any strategies you'd recommend for people when it comes to organizing their work and breaking down tasks into smaller and manageable bits so that they can be effective and efficient in delivering their work.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing that I like to do is make sure that we identify what we consider like a session or a seat. So my personal opinion, the way I look at this is I don't think anything is really able to be done in less than like a 15-minute block. So even if you're going to respond to an email, it's going to take you a certain amount of time to, as pedantic as this is, sit in your chair, start your computer, open the email browser, open Outlook, go through. There's steps that have to happen there, right? So even if you say checking email only takes me 2 minutes, let's say, when I log in for the day, sure, that may be true. But the thing is, you're not measuring all the periphery things that happen around that. So when we look at processes, what we have to do is we actually have to just reduce them to their most idiotic and insane steps because we're humans and we tend to forget step 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 exist because we only kind of click on at step 5. So, for instance, like you try to explain somebody to check their email. You say, "Okay, I sent you an email, check it." You're operating under an assumption that they understand what 0 to 5 or 6 is. They understand what an email is, like, it's funny, but, they understand how to log into a computer. They understand all of these things by simply saying, "Hey, check your email." So what I like to do is break down things into 15-minute blocks and say, "What are you doing in this session time at 15 minutes?" And then through that, you can list out every single thing that you've done, and you can kind of break those into quadrants of an hour. If you do that for an entire week, you can start to recognize patterns, right? You can start to see this and you can start to say, I spend this 15-minute block here and this 15-minute block here and this 15-minute block here. You can start removing, combining, altering, looking at all of those different blocks. None of this has anything to do with automation or AI or anything. This is rote stuff where you do this yourself. And this can't be done by a consultant. It can't be done by someone else. It can't be done by AI. It can't be done by anything but you. You have to go through and say, honestly, this is what I've done for the last 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever it is that you feel comfortable with. And then you go through that and you prioritize the things that you're doing to understand what the step 0 to step 5 that you're forgetting, and then that's how you can prioritize what to look for. Because the problem is people want to look for these processes that take a really long time, and they want to eat the elephant, and it gets too complicated, and they want to be like, "Oh man, I need to automate my email." Okay, what does that mean? What does that even mean to do? I need, okay, do you want to automate responding to emails? Do you want to automate categorization? Do you not want to get spam? Do you want to block time so that way you can't check your email for a certain time because you know it's like a Pavlov trigger for you? Like, what does it mean? So you have to go through and identify this. And how you do that is you journal, right? Like, if you it's just like anything else, right? Like, if you want to optimize your weight loss journey, what do? You write down what you ate for the day. And at the end of the week, you look back and you're like, "Oh man, during this time and this time, I really have not an optimized process. I need to look at that." But until you measure it, until you break that down into individual things you've eaten, then you're never going to be able to actually do anything with that data, right? So how do you do that? Break it down into 15, 30, 60 minutes, whatever you feel comfortable with, and then journal what you did. And if you're not comfortable with that, that means that you're not comfortable with optimizing your time. And there's a reason for that. And that's fine. But if you're looking for like automation, this is step zero. You have to do this. And if you're looking at like automation as like a something to solve for some problem, it may not be the solution, and the problem may not be you have too many things to do, right? So identifying the steps that you have, the stuff that you have to do in those blocks of time, that's the way to go. That's the only really way to start all of this, you know?
Mhm. You gave two examples with opposite time durations. One is very short, and one is very, very long. And
Yeah.
I guess the direction we're trying to go with this identification process is to help us at the end of the day build a workflow daily that allows us to get into a working flow and maximize our energy that we spend towards work, right?
Yep. Yeah. You want to identify, it's just there's no real right or wrong way, because if you're doing, like, let's say you're doing video editing, right? Or something that's like super highly creative, like graphic design or graphic editing or video, whatever, all this stuff, right? None of all of those things take a really long time, and every session that you have is going to be significantly longer than 15 minutes. Like, you just can't, like, let's say you're a Twitch streamer, right? And you want
Mhm.
to optimize your processes. Like, 15 minutes is nothing to you. Like, you need to look at the processes that you regularly do within your systems that are a chunk of time, because you you have to and get this correct though. Once you have identified those things that take the chunk of time, you have to break those down into individual steps, like the second microsecond steps. But you have to identify the processes of the things you do. And if you're in a regular business, and if you're in a marketing or advertising or a development agency, something like that, you probably have rote, quote unquote, busy work tasks that have to happen that you can identify through pattern recognition. And it, no one's going to tell you how long that can be. So I don't think it should be longer than 1 hour, because that way you can easily recognize, okay, every hour you should be standing up anyways. So you should look at it that way. You could, every time you take an hour, you optimize the system just for your brain. Um, so if you do that, like, I would never recommend going more than an hour, but look at everything that you're doing, and maybe you have a 4 hour session of deep work, but that would be 4 separate hours of these things. And what did you do during those hours? And it's not necessarily short time or long time, because there is no short or long depending upon what you're doing. So if, like I said, if you're doing video editing, a short amount of time may be 1 hour, but if you're doing email marketing, a short amount of time may be 5 minutes. So, but that 5 minutes is never 5 minutes. It's always periphery. So what I recommend is going through and identifying it and writing everything down and prioritizing it, for the reason of understanding what it is that you're actually doing to build the system, to build the workflow, saying, okay, I understand. Maybe you don't even realize that you check emails that between 10:30 and 11 every single day. Maybe you don't even realize that. But then you look at the pattern, you're like, oh, I stop what I'm doing right before lunch and I spend 30 minutes every single day just going through my email. And maybe, you just don't even recognize that because it's just what you do. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to break the pattern by recognizing the pattern, and then once you do that, you can start optimizing because you realize there's a pattern. So the time frame only is relevant to the person doing it. It's not necessarily like a hard and fast rule, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So on the topic of time and the relativity of the task duration based on what you do, how helpful would you say is time tracking when you're working with teams, especially knowing since that a lot of people are actually uncomfortable with tracking their time, feeling that they're being, watched and kind of supervised. How helpful is it for you to have timestamps and understand the relative importance of every task in a work week?
This depends on the systems, and, this is why it's human first, and this is why there's no right answer ever. Time tracking is amazing if you commoditize time, okay? If you're in a system where it's transactional and you sell time, uh, lawyers, not really doctors, lawyers, mechanics, anyone that does flat rate, like if you're in the aviation industry, if you're in the automotive industry, if you're in the legal profession, um, if you are in anything that has a direct ROI to commoditization of time, everyone that is involved in that signed up for that. That is the show that they bought tickets for. So to not have it in that system is disservice to the users of the system, and they want it. Why do they want it? Because they are paid strictly for their time. It's a transactional thing. Like, for instance, if the listeners don't understand what flat rate is, it's really simple. Like when you go to the mechanic and they tell you that it's going to be, let's say, 10 hours to replace your engine in your car, that mechanic gets paid 10 hours to do that job. If that mechanic does it in 2 hours, that mechanic gets paid 10 hours. Dope. If that mechanic does it in 20 hours, that mechanic gets paid 10 hours. Okay. The reason that you want to track time very, very clearly in that situation is because if I get paid 10 hours to do a job I can do in 2 hours, that means that I can do four of those every day and I can get paid 40 hours every single day. So you bet your bottom that I want time tracking. I want the specific time that I've put in that I could sell because I'm getting paid for this. So if I took 2 hours, I'm gonna track for 2 hours and they sell 10 hours and now I'm upside 8 hours. I can just go home for the day. I made 10 hours, or I can continue. Okay. Legal profession are the same way. A legal profession, they work on a retainer basis, which means you give them a grip of money and then they work off of that money. So you say, here's $5,000 or here's $10,000. And they're like, all right, cool. That's just for us to exist. And you get in that, you get this guy and he's the main legal guy and he's $150 an hour. And then here's the researcher guy and he's $100 an hour. And here's this guy. Okay. And they all get paid by the hour to a certain amount above the retainer. So if the retainer says that you get 5 hours of research every month and the researcher finds a way to do 10 hours, that means that that researcher gets paid a bonus for the time above that they tracked, right? So commoditization of that time and the transactional nature of all of those systems means everyone wants it, everybody. And if you don't have it, you're very upset that you don't have it because you think you're leaving money on the table. It's like, I need this. Like, this is what I'm doing. Like, these are my receipts. Like, I need the balance sheet at the end of the day for me to be able to give this to you so I can make the money for the system. Okay. On the converse, on the opposite side of that, if you do not have a transactional nature between you and your employer and you, if it's not transactional and commoditization of your time and they're renting your time tracking at that point is a burden because you are judged on your overall contribution of your time rented to them in relation to the overall cost of this balance sheet thing called labor. You are a cost to them. Okay. And you are going to have sort of an issue there if you don't understand that you're just renting time. And if you put, like, for instance, you put your self worth into whatever it is that you're building and not understanding that what you're building isn't relevant to the person that is renting your time. The time
Mhm.
is the thing. So there's a conflation of apples and oranges of what's being sold and what's being bought. So time tracking, if the time tracking is a transactional commodity, is perfect and a needed and is an amazing thing. But if it's like a salary thing where you're not really judged on your output, but your input, then you have to just kind of find stuff to fill the time because it's not transactional. That time has been rented regardless of if you have something to do or not. So this is like why the top down management style requires you to be in the office, why they want everyone to be in the office, and why middle managers want everyone to be there is because the middle manager in the MBA understands that they're renting your time and that you are not a commodity. Your time in aggregate is the thing being rented, and the output is the aggregate of all of that rental time. And the way to be efficient in that rental time is to be fill it. And it doesn't really matter the output of it. It's the delta of available time to filled time, and you're measured as a middle manager by that. So you have 9 people that you have underneath you, and their menial output is 60%, and your KPI is to get their menial output to 70%. At that point, you have to either decide, do I go and have like hard conversations with people, or do I just fill their plate with busy work and increase that number? So time tracking, it just depends on the system, and what you're doing and
That's
where
why
you're
it's
at.
humans first, right? The
Right.
tools are gonna depend on the specific situation.
Right.
And so if we go back to teams where we're looking to optimize their work, what are some effective ways they can use to identify things that could be automated?
Take my automation quiz. So I just spent 200 hours building this thing because this is like honestly the most um frequent, I guess, would be. But the thing that I am asked most by humans is, what can I automate? What can I automate? They learn my company's named Automate to Win. They run through me through LinkedIn. They hear me speak at something, and they hear me talk about removing busy work to help you, human first engineering, and they're like, hey, great, and everyone's happy. But then the next inevitable question is, well, what can I automate? And the answer to that is, you didn't listen to this whole first part because it's human first. Like, you can automate whatever you can automate. Like, I can't help you with that because your processes are your processes, and they got you to wherever it is that you're at right now. So to reduce those as to say they're not working is a trap. It's not the right way. What you have to look at is say, all right, where I'm at right now is not necessarily where I want to be, and not even where I could be, because you don't know where you could be. It has to be where I want to be. So what I did is I built this 9 question uh, quiz. It's automatedwin.com/automation.quiz, automation dash quiz. What this will do is it'll ask you 9 questions, and it'll ask you how frequently you do one of these 9 things. So, like, how frequently do you copy paste between one program and another? How frequently do you report into multiple tools? How frequently do you create assets? How frequently do you organize or categorize your email? How frequently do you synchronize or create calendar hookups, stuff like that, right? And it's hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, never. And what that did is I built an algorithm that goes and it comes back and it identifies tasks that you can look for and says, these are the tasks that you should definitely look for based upon what you're doing. So, like, if you're a marketing person and you're doing a bunch of copy paste, what I would say to do is, first of all, enable sticky keys. And if you don't know what this is, if you're on a PC, you hit shift 5 times. And if you're on a Mac, you go into systems, settings, keyboard accessibility, and set on sticky keys. What is sticky keys? It's an accessibility tool. So let's say you have one finger and you want to type. How do you copy paste? Because you can't. Like, you use your nose or your finger. Like, how do you do? So this is their way around this. And sticky keys is literally what it sounds like. Hit shift 5 times or turn it on the Mac, and it allows you to do control, and then you'll hear a noise. And that noise will tell you, okay, it's now listening for the second. So you hit control, beep, and then C, and then now you've copied. So then now you hit control, beep, and then you can hit V again. And now instead of holding control and hitting V with two fingers, you can use the accessibility keyboard for copy paste, right? Why does this matter and why do we use it? Because we set up a Pavlov trigger. And then everyone knows what Pavlov is. The bell rings, dogs salivate, no problem. This trigger is okay, I hit control to copy, write down what I just did. So in the automation quiz, there's literally 9 worksheets that you print out. And it's annoying and you have to get a printer, but there's a reason. The reason you do this is because when you write something, it's easier to remember and it breaks the pattern and it helps you understand what you're doing. So you go in and you hit control C and you're like, boop. Oh, okay. I'm copying something. What did I, okay. I'm in Excel and I'm going into Gmail and done. All right. Did it 5 minutes later going boop. Geez. Okay. In Excel. So then you go through and you literally have a list at the end of the day of 50 or 60 times that you copy and pasted. And you're just like, why did I do all that? And then if you do this for a week, you can see 50, 60, 70, 80 times a day that you're doing this. And the thing that people don't realize and the thing that's so critical about this is the time that's built in around that, the code switching that you have to do, you don't even think about because we're humans and we just dismiss all of these things. But you have a minute to a minute and a half of just I'm in a UI of Microsoft Excel and there's a ribbon and there's cells and there's like I'm in a spreadsheet and now I have to go copy data from a website into Microsoft Excel. That's something that you probably have to do on a regular basis, right? That
Mhm.
doesn't seem like it's a big deal. It seems like we just process this like it's no big deal. But let build an AI agent to do that. Like build an AI agent to do that. Build an AI agent to go into a website, grab a specific contextual thing on that website based upon a search from work that's already being done, format that data into a shape that makes sense, then paste it relevantly into the spreadsheet contextually for whatever you're doing, format it to remove links and strip the HTML, all of those things right now. Just pause this and go build a GPT for that and come back to now and then tell me how easy that is. And you're doing that 80 times a day. Do you like
Mhm.
the mental load and cognitive buildup that is? You just have a certain amount of decisions that you can just make. There's a certain amount of mental fatigue that you can handle. So if you find yourself doing this stuff, this is like this is the problem. You you don't look at I need to automate the copy paste. You look at I need to automate the thing that you're copy pasting into, like the end result of the thing. And that is never, ever, ever going to happen because you're just never going to get started. You're going to look at this and you're just be like, I don't even, this is too, I don't even know what I do. What do I do? And because you're starting at step 5 and you're telling the agent or the automation to start at step 5 and it doesn't even understand what step 1 is. So it's like, I don't know how to do this, you know?
Right.
So that's the trap there is we forget how complicated the stuff is that we're doing because it just happens inside of our subconscious because we just inherently do it. But if you're code switching between different UIs, that's cognitive load. If you're having meetings in between any other data, that is complete 1000% will burn you. And you don't understand this, but what'll happen is you'll be in investigative data analysis mode and that requires zero social interactions. That requires zero interactivity or active listening or any kind of cognitive ability that requires you to be like present. That just requires you to be a robot. You can put music on it, and then you can be surprised at the end of it how you just got to the end result because you just get into autopilot. If you're broke up of that, right? It usually takes about an hour to get into that mode. If you get broke by that because you have a meeting or because somebody distracted you or because whatever, getting back into that is never going to happen. You may get into a similar state that allows you to interact with the data, and the result would be the same, but the process that you were in of that flow state, it has to be a flow. So you you have to understand the difference between cognitive and non-cognitive, system one, system two, all of these things, to start identifying the patterns of what can I break out of, right? So what do you do here? Take the automation quiz, get these 9 different things, say, okay, these are the different places and different ways that I am um, basically patterning my time. And then if you have, let's say, Tuesdays are 4 hours that you understand that you just generally aren't interrupted, not really doing copy pasting, you're not really doing, then you look at that and you say, I got 4 hours that I'm going to block a meeting with myself that no one can book, that I'm going to use tools that don't allow me to check my email. I'm going to use tools that don't allow me to open social media. I'm going to set focus time during this. And I'm not going to say what I'm necessarily going to do, but I know I got 4 hours from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesdays that I can just vibe. Here's my jazz time. And you'd be
Mhm.
amazed by what you can do with that because you don't have cognitive load at all. You
Mhm.
you just hit lunch and then you're free. And then you're free to wander. And if you have a project that you're working on, you're under gun and it's Friday and you know it's due Wednesday, you don't have the mental load over the weekend of saying I have to work on this or work late because you have a solid 4 hours where you'll get more done than anything ever before because this is the time. And
Yeah.
but the trap with that is getting to a point where you're like, all right, I'm going to dump everything in that time. I'm just going to leave it for that because it's not for that. This is your meditative state.
This is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. Every week, we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch. Now back to the episode.
Shawn, we were just talking about menial tasks and the fact that they create mental load for the team. I want us to elevate from the work and actually think about the long term and company level. How does these menial tasks and the mental load and fatigue that comes with it can affect our company culture over time?
So the, the real culture of a company is how effectively it listens to the pain points of its people, right? So you can't build any type of culture. That doesn't work that way. It is a culmination of a bunch of different things and a bunch of different just energies. So the way that you can identify what a culture is by how the employer looks at the employee and says, okay, how can we not have you feel like you don't have locus of control? Locus of control is a psychological concept that determines, do you feel like you are internally or externally motivated in the things that you do? So do you feel like you have control over the decisions that you're making, or do you have someone else that's telling you this is everything that you have to do? The time tracking big brother, big sister looking at you type thing. Menial tasks, by definition, don't need a human to be done. So if your job to be done is high level cognitive thought, and the tasks that you're continually assigned are jobs that do not need high level cognitive ability, that is an immediate red flag for everyone about the quote unquote culture of the company. Okay. A toxic company, hate that because it's overused, but a company that will definitely be thought twice about is one that looks at you as a cog in a wheel and does not concern itself with your mental connection and well-being with what you do. Okay. Beyond like rote stuff like bathroom breaks and pay well and all that stuff, right? That's to me table stakes of a company that deserve to be have employees in the first place. Okay.
Mhm.
Mutual respect and that stuff. But what I mean is Does an employer look at a situation and say, "Hey, I'm hiring you for an output by way of renting time for you, so that way you have a security level, so that way you can be free to put whatever time you want to input because I need an output from you." And during that time, I don't necessarily care what it is that you're individually doing as long as the output is there for me, because I've understood that I'm purchasing an output for you, and I'm not necessarily renting your time. It just depends on the NBA is running it. Like, are they looking at you as a commodity, or are they looking at the overall holistic view of the system and understanding that your input is the thing that actually matters? So it just depends on how they look at it. But menial tasks, regardless of how you are assigned them, by definition will remove locus of control from you, because you understand that they don't have to be done by you, but you're doing them because you're told to. So if your dad is giving you an assignment to take out the garbage, you just do it because you're told to. He easily could do it. This is menial task, menial labor. Like, there's literally no reason for him not to do it other than you exist. Okay. So that hierarchical nature doesn't have the culture of breeding a communicative, like, way of moving forward. All that is get in line behind me and do what I tell you to do. And here are the tasks for you. And this is the way you do those tasks, and don't step out of line. And if you do, someone else will be here to do those tasks because you don't have to. So it's not in any way human first, it's systems first. So it's the opposite way that I look at things. So I want to remove the menial tasks to allow the human to be human. And other people want to um, remove the menial task from the human by removing the human. So they want to figure out a way to identify these menial tasks, which don't have to happen at all, but also identify the steps that the human has to have, and then automate that too. So it's the difference between Henry Ford and Jeff Bezos, if that makes sense. Henry Ford
Hmm.
understood that he didn't necessarily need skilled labor to build a car. He needed semi-skilled um, makers, and he needed semi-skilled engine builders. Like, these are very skilled, specifically skilled people, but each one of those people had a specific role, and those people had a line in the assembly. Now, Bezos looks at the human and looks at that as training data for the AI. So Bezos and Elon Musk, they look at this as, yeah, you have to exist as inputs to the system because my systems need to learn. My systems need to understand where you take these menial tasks. Okay. So the culture in those businesses are optimize immediately all things, everything transactional, make things go faster. Doesn't matter how it happens. I don't care if you have to pee in a bottle, go faster. Systems first. Elon Musk and um, Jeff Bezos. Where Henry Ford is definitely systems first, but he understood that the humans were the critical component of it. And that's why every other manufacturer and every other industry were forced to do what he did, because he said, I'm going to pay you a living wage to work in my factory to become a skilled laborer, and you're going to just do this for the rest of your life. So he changed the game. And that's what I mean by, he didn't go out and decide to build a culture of automation and build a culture of treating his employees right. That's not how it works. Ford looked at the problem and said, I need to build cars. I can't get people to build cars because it's too complicated. Break this down into individual systems. Let me get people in here that I can train and pay higher than anyone else, and give them locus of control. Not because I want to, not because Ford was a horrible human, not because I want to, because it's best for the system. This is the critical thing. He didn't really care about the humans at all, but he realized if he got out of his own way and made it better for the humans as an input, the culture would be there and it would build itself. And he would become the richest person to do this, and he would change the way business is done. And it wasn't altruism, and it wasn't because he cared about humans or because he wanted the best product in the best way that was repeatable. And this was the only way that it would work. It just so happened that it allowed things like unions and stuff like that to happen. That's a knock-on effect. It's like Bill Gates exists, and he's kind of really a horrible human, but that begets Melinda Gates, and we get malaria being solved. You know what I mean? Like Jeff Bezos exists, and he's kind of a horrible human, but that begets th- him divorcing his wife, and she gives $650 million to women funding. So it's like the culture of all of this can't be built. It only could be recognized after the fact. So
Mhm.
but how do you do it? How do you place it in the building blocks and the foundation of how to do that is to understand that as the employer, you're in your own way. If you're just filling their time, if you're just giving them because you think you're renting their time, and if they're not busy, then it's inefficient. um that you're kind of just cutting your nose off to spite your face at that point. So like, there's no real right answer to that. There's no way. How do you build the culture? You can only set it, and then at the end of it, be surprised and look back and say, "Oh yeah, here it is." You know.
Those examples were very evocative. Meant a lot. um, Here's my last big question. We see that right now. There's always a very hot trend right now. If we go on LinkedIn and open up 10 posts, we'll see AI come up a lot. There might be a different flavor of the month later, but what advice can you give teams and companies when they're looking at these different technologies and tools and getting excited for them to avoid the pitfalls before getting too deep into something that's hard to get out of?
Hmm. Well, I knock no hustle. Okay, so I don't speak ill of any program or software or person or anything ever. So I celebrate every single human that's out there trying to wrap around GPT and to trying to build something. So yeah, the thing I would caution against though, and this is the problem I think, is just like anything else. And you see this in CRO often. If it's too good to be true, it's just not true. I don't know how else to really say that. And there's no real like concrete examples because maybe, and honestly, I hope every single person that says that they're using AI in the way that they're using it is genuine and they really believe that they're doing that. And that's how I live my life, and I take them at their face value, and I don't hate on anyone, and I celebrate them until they give me reason, and then they become irrelevant. But what I would say though is anyone that tells you that they have something that is non-specific, meaning it can do more than one thing. What we have right now is what's known as specific AI. Okay, so for example, let's say we taught an AI to build or write the absolute best Dungeons and Dragons or Lord of the Rings fan fiction. I mean, this thing is Tolkien Jr. Okay, it wrote the next version of this, and you couldn't tell. Or Game of Thrones, pick an author. Let's say J.R. Martin dies or whatever, like George Martin dies, and he never finishes his book. We get an AI to finish it, and you never know that he didn't write it. Okay, in that instance, that's first of all, right now, I wouldn't say impossible, but it's going to take some time and effort, and it's going to take some really smart stuff. But it's possible. You could do it. Okay. Cool. We're in that world, right? We got J.R. Tolkien or George Martin AI. It can bang out manuscripts or books in their voice that is indecipherable from anything that they would have written themselves. Great. Awesome. Tell that thing to make you a recipe for baking a cake. Tell it to write you prose. Tell it to create you a sonnet. Tell it to do any other literary tasks that would be within the realm Another example, let's say we've created an AI Mitch Hedberg, and we'll use a Mitch Hedberg joke from this. He famously said comedians are the only profession in which being successful in it, people will ask if you could do another profession. Oh, you're a comedian. Can you act? Okay. If you built a comedian AI right now, and it was the best comedian, first of all, it would have to be a singular comedian. It would not have to be, it could not be a comedian. It would have to be an AI Mitch Hedberg, an AI George Carlin, an AI, pick one, doesn't matter. You can then train that and then over time make it indecipherable from this person. Great. Have that comedian then go write a play. It can't. So that example and the reasons I go into that is so you understand that we have at the most specific AI, and it's not even AI, it's LLMs. So we have specific LLMs that give you the statistical answer to a question within a frame of reference. This is not anything that is purported by most of these tools. So most of these tools that will say, "Hey, we have AI," or "I am an AI tool," their moat around it is basically none because what they are is a wrapper around an API of GPT, and it is a very clever, smart, and efficient prompt builder. So the problem with that is it's like building a WordPress plugin when WordPress just takes the best stuff out of every plugin every built every 3 months and incorporates it into WordPress, and you're building something that is reliant on WordPress still being 63% of the internet or whatever number it is, right? So you build this amazing thing and you're like, "Oh, man," you got all these users and you're like, "This is great. Now we have this thing for WordPress and it does this awesome amazing thing." And now WordPress says, "Oh, that is really dope. Hey, WordPress version 7.5 now includes this." And because it's open source and because the way you built it and because you built it on the backbone of a thing, you're you don't have a moat there. Like it's just anyone could just grab it. And if you're building something just to get your name out there and just to get, your chops on AI, that's great. But if you're on the other end of that and you have one choice to purchase a tool and the person that is building the tool is doing it because they believe in it, I agree with that, but also because they need to do this, they need to get their reps in, and they're doing a wrapper that that they inherently understand will probably just be irrelevant in 3 to 6 months. Another example would be anyone that spent the last year or so building an AI video creator off of images and text that can then stitch your images into video. Those people who have done amazing work and have really put things forward and used it like stable diffusion models and really gotten to a point where you can create like almost pretty cool video, like then Sora drops.
Mhm.
And now what? And now what? You know what I mean? So
Right. Yeah. Mhm.
if you were one of the people that did an RFP or you did one of those people that paid 20 grand to get this thing on your system in your enterprise and you're looking at it and you're like, well, this tool's now garbage, or maybe you have an AI personalization tool that you've been running and you realize that it's not learning the way that it said it was learning, and now they're pivoting into using an LLM, and you're like, but wait, I thought we were training all this data, and they're like, yeah, just kidding, we realized it was going to cost $1 billion to be able to build the context engine to run this actual data set that we've been training on. And it's no fault of theirs because they don't really think about that. They don't really think about, yeah, great. Let's record all of the data that you've done. Let's record all the personalizations that we've done. Let's record of maybe the experimentation outputs that we've done. That's awesome. But there's a very big step that has to go between that training data and an LLM or what we call an AI. And it took like, I don't know, 150, $200 million from 2015 to 2021 for Open AI to even announce GPT-2. So, yeah, sure. If you have that kind of time and that kind of money to have somebody sit there and human go through this and do all of the stuff that you need, this is the thing. You don't. No one does. And anyone that tells you that they're going to train on your data or they have data from previous that they've trained on, no, they don't, because they didn't know what data they would need to train on the system that they hadn't built yet. So that in itself is a paradoxical conversation where they say, hey, we have an
Mhm.
AI that we've built in the last year that's being trained on previous data from the last, say, 6 years, because we have this huge data set. But there's mental gymnastics that have to happen there. And we just have to eliminate the fact that this AI, there was no way for you to ever understand what you were going to be recording at the time you were recording it in that data set for this. So you have to shape that data somehow. You can't just plug an LLM into it and be like, hey, figure this out.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't work that way. So you have to take the time to have a human go through and do old school natural language processing. Sure, sure, there's machine learning that happens here, but this is different. This still requires a lot of work. And I don't know that the people that are saying, hey, we have this AI and they just wrap around GPT have done this work.
So, lesson is be skeptical, look at tools that are mostly focused, and anything that looks too good to be true, be wary of it and dig deeper, investigate.
I mean, that's true for any tool, right?
Sure is.
I mean, that's tool for any marketing tool, for any LinkedIn tool, for anything. Anything that somebody sends you an email and says, I'll make your life my own tools, like my automate to win stuff, you should be skeptical about because I'm just some guy on the internet telling you that I can remove the busy work in your life. That you should be skeptical, and I should give you enough proof that it comes to you and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Because if you just accept it, then you're accepting the fact that there's things in your day that you're doing that you don't necessarily have to do. And that's a trap too, because maybe there's not. Maybe
Totally.
maybe what you're doing needs to be done and you just don't like it. And that's fine. And I understand it. But that's different than saying this is busy work. You know? Like this doesn't have this a robot could do this only because you don't enjoy it. Because you don't or not necessarily you whoever doesn't enjoy the process. That doesn't necessarily mean the system is bad or the process is bad. That just means that you don't enjoy it. And that's a possibility too. A possibility is you're just a bad fit in the system and you need to move in a different position in the system. And that's why human first is so important because it just doesn't matter about what you're actually doing. Like especially if you're renting time, your time is already rented. So just you can figure out a place to fit where you can get locus of control back. You can actually start to feel like you're contributing. And then the things that you were feeling were busy work, other people could do. They don't feel like they're busy work because they feel that it allows them to release whatever they need. So maybe one person doesn't like to be in task management and doing that type of scheduling and they feel like that's busy work and it's like beneath them or like it's just constrictive for them and another person is super organized and super task and loves lists and gets a dopamine hit when they get to move things to status and their whole entire life is super
Mhm.
organized. Just switch those people and put the person in charge of, you know, organizing and running the system where they enjoy it and get the other person out and you automate out both of those people's systems. So the person that doesn't like reporting out and communicating to other people because their systems focused and maybe introverted, what you do is you communicate out. So you automate the systems there that says, when I do all these neat little systems things that I do, build communication layers that send it out to the people that don't care about the systems things. And the other side is when I do cool communications things, like when I build a new asset or when I push a new Git commit or close a new contract or I create a new contract in my CRM, that is updated within the task layer. So the person who loves the levers and the buttons gets updated. So then they can move the levers and the buttons, which then gets sent back to the person communicating. So you never like remove the systems. You just remove the part that they don't want to do. And that's why it's human first. because every person's automation is going to be slightly different. And there's no like set automation. So if, Simon and Sean work at the same company, my automation set and your automation set will be different because I'm going to remove certain problems for stuff that you don't want to do. And I'm going to remove stuff that I don't want to do. But at the end of the day, the building of the culture means the employer allows the employees to not do the things that they don't want to do because they understand they're getting an output and they're not just renting time.
That's awesome. The kind of outcome of all of this is eliminating all the work that people don't want to do, granting them more quality time, allowing them to get into this flow state.
Yeah.
And the theory behind all that, right, is that we're going to create a much more productive environment.
Yeah.
That was
Hopefully.
incredible conversation, Sean, and really grateful we had you as a guest here on the Experiment Nation podcast. Where can people find you if they like this conversation and want to hear and see more of you?
LinkedIn, definitely. I just launched this automation quiz. It's automatetowin.com/automation-quiz. It's free. It's a 75-page PDF that will come back with a customized identification of what you can automate, how to do it, steps to test, identify. Like, it's a really cool thing that I put a lot of time into. Yeah, I'm on the Experiment Nation Slack, so you can hit me there. And yeah, I'm online, so I am here.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Sean. This was an awesome conversation, and I hope people took away a lot out of it. We can definitely see how the human, the processes, and the systems kind of all connect to each other. And our goal is to deliver, higher quality work and higher appreciation of our time spent working. So this was an incredible discussion, and thank you for joining us.
Nah, my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
This is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch